Hi, Tony.
Hi, how
Long
are
time
you,
no see.
Toya? Oh, it's been a while, but that's your fault. You ran off to Beijing.
Welcome to my new podcast. This is a platform for ideas and stories from all walks of life.
Mhm.
And you have taught me so much about life, about English, about everything in the world. So I would love to invite you here to share some of your perspectives. Would it be possible for you to give us a little bit of self-introduction first?
Sure. Obviously, my name is Tony, and I met Toya at Nanjing University, where I taught for 9 years. And while I was teaching there, I was also teaching at Southeast University, and I actually taught at Southeast University for an extra year. I taught there for 10 years. And before that, I taught for 3 years at a technical college in Dachang. And I have to tell you, that I have many friends and former students from Nanjing University and from Southeast University, where I taught for a long time. But I actually have more friends uh, from my first 3 years of teaching in China. They were a little different. They were technical. They went right after their schooling. They went to work in factories and so on. And a lot of them have families. The kids are in school now, and it's and they send pictures to me. And so it's been a really great experience living in China for the time I did. Um, it was, for me, going to China was an eye-opening experience because the Western press does not give us a very good picture of what China is all about. I was expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't what I actually saw when I arrived. I saw this fantastic place. In fact, people were asking me like a week after coming into China, my colleagues were saying, "Are you homesick?" I said, "Well, to tell you the truth, it kind of feels like home here." I said, if you change the signs from Chinese to Italian, I think I was in Italy. Other than the architecture, because the people were all friendly like that. They were all very friendly to me. Everybody was really open. Everybody was having a good time, it seemed to me anyway. And so, it was like I found my second home. And so, I really, obviously, there was a lot of other things that happened during my time in China that really made my connection even stronger. But it felt like I had gone back home. It was simple as that. I was born in Italy, southern Italy, in the mountains of a region called Calabria. And actually, we're not at that time. That area of the country was not too much different than some parts of southwest and northwest China in the countryside. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have running water. Um, we didn't have a lot of access to many services. Uh, and, my hometown, there was only about 600 people. So small village. And we relied on each other. And in fact, my whole basis for the rest of my life in terms of the community orientation that I've always had, which you'll remember that I had from our riverbank cleanup, um, has come from that experience in my hometown. When I was 5, there was a major flood, and at that time, it washed away most of our garden because we could grow things for the winter, but it washed everything away, and we were all basically starving. We were hungry. I can still remember when I think about that time. I can still remember the feeling of being hungry. We were fortunate because everybody would have olives that they had preserved, and my mom we had made bread because the whole village grew wheat at this flat area at the top of our village, and that everybody grew the wheat together and they harvested together, and everybody got some of the flour afterwards. And what my mom would do is she would make bread, and so it would go hard, so it wouldn't go bad. And she would hang it from the ceiling so the mice couldn't get to it. And then at that time, she would we were hungry, but we only had olives and we only had that hard bread. So she would put the bread, moisten it with water so we could actually chew it. And she would give us, my sisters and I, um, some olives. And, and that would be it for the day. And my sisters and I thought we were smart and we, have some bread left over and we'd ask her for some more olives. And she'd give us some more olives, or we'd have some more olives and we'd have some more bread. And it wasn't until much later in life, when my mom had moved back from Canada to Italy, and I was sitting there talking to her, and I was reminiscing to her about this particular time, and she says, "Yes, I remember that well." She said, "Yeah, you guys didn't know it, but I had to give you my bread or my olives because there was only so much for us to go around." But the whole village would share, would try and share, so nobody would go hungry. And that kind of told me about the community, the importance of community, the importance of working together to make everybody else better, so that nobody would suffer. And I'm going to assume that, if we go back in history to China, to the countryside, villages, that we would find the exact same thing. I'm sure we'd find the exact same thing. And so that kind of was the basis of what drove the rest of my life about the importance of community and about helping each other. And when I was 7, my family moved to Canada. And there, our lives became very, very good very quickly because there was work. My father was a mason, and there was lots of work to build houses. My family kept growing. I have 8 brothers and sisters, so there was 9 of us. And so uh, we all helped. We all helped my mom. My mom went out, got a job. Unfortunately, when my elder sister turned 16, she was taken out of school, and she shouldn't have been because of all of us, she's the smartest. She was the smartest. And she went to work to help the family. I always knew I wanted to go to university. So when I was 13, I started working after school. And I would give my mom some money, but I opened up a bank account and put some money aside so I could pay for my university education because I knew that with the rest of the family that was growing up, my parents couldn't afford to send me. So I always worked throughout, but I was no different than a lot of other kids in my high school, for example. Everybody had part-time jobs, um, and that. That time period, I remember it from the standpoint of, learning the responsibility of showing up for work, of doing the job properly, how to save money, how to manage my time because I had to go to school. At the same time as I was doing all this, I was also playing on the high school football team. I was playing American football with my high school, and I was playing international football with the community team in the city. And somehow I found time afterwards to go and work evenings until 12 o'clock, till midnight. I'd get up and, I'd do my homework when I was working. It's in between things. Um, and so, that kind of is structured. And you can see that what I'm talking to you is that it doesn't sound too dissimilar from how hard people work in China. So that's why when I arrived in China, I didn't feel like I had gone to a distant country or a foreign country. I kind of felt like I was in Italy because Italians in Canada worked very hard to get ahead. And then of course I went to university, um, and my intention was to go to law school. I met my first wife, and we got married just before I finished my MA, and I had been accepted to law school. And she had already started teaching. And so for the summer, I went and decided to get a job. I'd taken 9 months off between my BA and my MA to help her father because he had a business we call builder supply. It's a place where people go to buy materials to fix their houses. And so I went to help him because he lost his main employee, and it was a very small business, but very profitable for them. And while I was doing that, my my first wife was in teachers college, learning to be a teacher. And so as I was finishing my MA, she had finished her teaching credentials and started teaching, and so we got married. And then I took the summer and started working at this company that was similar to what her father's business was. And and everybody working there hadn't finished high school. And so, they thought, oh, look at this guy, the university guy, he's going to work here, sweeping the warehouse floor, helping people load lumber, wood. And I said, man, I'm just going to have fun. I'm only going to be here till September, and I'm going to start law school in September. So anyway, as I'm having fun, I'm selling more than everybody else. I decided that if I served somebody, they weren't walking out unless I sold them something. So anyway, my manager called me in and said, you've been here for a month. I don't normally do this. I'm going to give you a raise. He said, but I've also talked to my boss about you, and he's talked to the head office, and they want you to go down to Toronto. They want to talk to you. So next Monday, I went down to Toronto, and they said, we know you want to go to law school, but that's 3 years of school. Then you have to article for 1 year, but that's the internship for 1 year. And then you have 6 months of bar exams. It's going to be 4.5 years before you start making any money. So you stay with us, and in 4.5 years, who knows where you'll be? So
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm driving back home, and as I'm driving home, I decide I'm not going to go to law school. I'm going to stay with this company. And I might have been a good lawyer. I don't know. But I tell you what, I was very good at being a businessman, very good at managing things. It's very good at fixing things, fixing companies that were not doing well. And they started with this company. The first store they made me manager of, they were going to close. They said, you go down and see if you can fix it. If you can fix it, we won't close it. Within 6 months, we were making money. So I was only there for 1 year, in that store for 1 year. And in that interim time, our company had bought a smaller company. And that smaller company had a location about 22 kilometers, I'm thinking miles, 22 kilometers away from my store. And the guy who was in charge of the advertising kept spending more money advertising for that store, who was my competitor as far as I was concerned. Okay, they're part of the same company now, but they were my competitor. And he wasn't spending anything on mine. So then finally, he spent like a little bit of money just to make it to me. So I was kind of angry. And I've always spoken my mind. I'm not the kind of person that I see something that I'm not feeling good about, that I'm going to. So I sent him a letter. I sent him a note saying, you know what? If you're going to spend that much money, it would be better. It would be better if you just put that money on your desk and burn it. So he was kind of offended by I don't know why. So good. So anyway, and he went down to the guy who was the company we bought. This guy was the president. Now he's the vice president of our operation, of our group. And we were all put in the same group. And he goes down to him and said, look what this guy down around. And so this guy has his secretary call me. He says, Mr. Baird would like to have lunch with you tomorrow. So I thought, I'm in trouble. So I said to my wife, I said, VP is coming down to talk to me tomorrow at lunchtime. I think he's going to fire me. Why? I said, why? I sent this letter to this guy. And so anyway, he comes down and we're sitting there at lunch. He says, Bill, that's the advertising guy. He says, Bill is a bit of a dumbass, but nobody's ever put him in his place. You're the only one that's done that. So I have an opening as my operations manager in the office. I'd like you to come and join me as operations manager and keep Bill in line. So he came down to offer me a promotion. We moved to Toronto, and I was there with him for not very long. What happened was that this is a big company. The company is actually owned by a company called Molson's, which had started as a brewery, brewing beer in 1837, I think, in Canada, in Montreal. And they had become very successful, and in the interim had bought a number of very large companies to try to diversify away from beer. And they had bought the company I worked for called Beaver Lumber. And it was the largest and oldest company of its type in Canada. Anyway, every quarter, when you work for a big company like that, every quarter, the various divisions have to present a plan to indicate, well, first of all, we have to tell them what happened the last quarter and what we're planning for the next quarters, so that they can put it in their overall, because the company was also publicly traded. So they have to let the shareholders know what's going on. So anyway, I started working for the vice president in April, and we had to make our quarterly report at the 1st of September. And so at that time, we have to do a commentary. We have to understand what's going on in the business. And I hadn't been in the office for very long, but he asked me to put together the commentary, which meant I needed to know, why things were happening in various places. So I spent a lot of time out in these stores that were making really good money, and why were they doing so much better than everybody else, and a lot of our other operations. And so we go into the meeting with all the senior managers of the corporate senior managers, because we're one of the divisions, and we're making our report. And so my boss should be the one making the report, and he would be speaking, and they'd ask a question: what about Warden Street? And he would look at me and say, Tony, what about Warden Street? And I would tell them about the store and why it was making money, why, what made it so different, and why is it that they were able to do something that other people could not. And so every time there was a question, he would ask me to answer it for him. So very fortuitous. You see, sometimes it's just the way that things happen. I can't tell you that my career would have progressed as fast if the company hadn't bought this other small company, and if this guy hadn't become the vice president of our division, and if I hadn't written that letter to the advertising guy, I'm not sure that I would have progressed as quickly as I did. So what happened was, I'd only been in the division from April until September. And after that meeting, I get a call. Now, I had met this guy before, because when they talked to me, convinced me to stay with the company, I was put into a special program for people they identified as potential senior managers. And so I would go into Toronto every 3 months or so for 1 week training. And I met the vice president of human resources at those meetings, at those training sessions. And so he gave me a call, because he was in those meetings. And he said, could you come down to the head office? I want to have lunch with you. So I went down, and we had lunch. He said, look, the company's being split into 2 divisions. And I'm going to take over one, and this other guy is going to take over the other. And I'd like you to come and join my team. There's going to be 7 senior managers, and I want you to be one of them. So had I not spent the time and really learned what was going on within that other division, and being called upon to answer the questions, this particular individual would not have been impressed enough to hire me. So again, I think some of it is more luck. It's more luck. Certainly, my going in and doing the work helped. But sometimes I think our paths are somewhat guided by lucky occurrences, not by things that, we make our own luck. Once the opportunity is given to us, I was able to make my own luck. But if I hadn't gone, these things hadn't happened the way it happened, I don't know, you know. So,
Do you think it's
um,
luck or destiny?
well, there's no such thing as destiny. I don't believe in destiny.
Really?
Um, yeah, there's no destiny. There's nothing there that's set forth for me to go this way or that way because, I've gone a variety of different ways based on some things that have happened. So, and then what happened was, um, we'd taken over and the company had restructured in a certain way. So we were um, responsible. We took over some of the offices across Canada, and then we would, and then what the people at Molson's wanted to do was to charge uh, rent, whatever the market rent was, um, for various parts of those things. So, for example, we had a building in Winnipeg, and the other division rented offices from us, but we only charged them the market rent the way we're supposed to. But they had offices in Calgary, and we rented from them, and they were charging us 3 times market rent. And so I talked to my boss, whose name was Ron Knowles. He was a great guy, and I learned a lot from him. I learned from him the most important thing about business management, and that is the business management is not about things, it's not about objects, and not about places, it's about people. And if you can motivate people to work as a team, then you will always be successful. And so he's a great uh, uh, a great guy to work for. Um, I, um, I'm not sure I would have been as good. I could have managed it later on if it wasn't for him. Again, I see that was luck to have him. Every step of the way in this company was. I just look at it and say, I think back at it. If this hadn't happened, none of this would have happened. Because I turned that small store around, there was a lot of suppliers that were approaching me to go work for them, and I turned them down. If I hadn't turned them down, some of them would coming to me with lucrative money offers, But I just felt loyalty to the company at that time because they gave me an opportunity. So anyway, Ron said to me, we're on the same team, Tony. We're on the same team. Don't worry about it. It all goes to the same pot. I said, no, Ron, no, yeah. I said, you're a human resource guy. You're not a street guy. I said, they're doing this to make us look bad. I said, no, don't worry about it. So about 2 years later, 2 years? Yeah, I think so. I think it's about 2 years later, maybe 2.5. He called me into his office and said, listen, I got to tell you, I've been fired. I said, what? I said, yeah. I said, you know how you were telling me about back 2.5 years ago about how they were overcharging us and they were making us look bad? I said, it's exactly what they were doing. You were right. I should have listened to you on that. I said, so I'm gone. He says, but I want you to know that they've already assured me that you and the rest of the team are all safe. But you got to tell you, letting Ron go was the end of the road for me with the company. Because the other guy was not a good guy. The guy and that guy always wanted to be president. And what happened was, about 3 months later, they realized that they made the wrong decision. They should have fired the other guy and not my boss. And so they never made that guy president. Okay, he started with the company when he was 16, and he'd been with them all of his life, but they never made him president. Anyway, I lasted 6 months, and then I quit. I got a job somewhere else, and and there I was hired in at a senior level. I was responsible for a division, and then I worked there for a while, and then I was moved to a new division. We were going to open up these special stores across Canada and into the U.S., and I was spending too much time away. And I remember clearly, I'd been away from my family for 3 weeks, and it was in August, and I was driving back, and my wife at that time we had two sons. They were up in my in-laws, and my in-laws lived up on a lake, large lake in Canada called Lake Huron, and uh, I flew in from Vancouver to Toronto, and I was driving home, driving up to see them, and it was a 4-hour drive. I was about halfway. It was raining outside. And I'm listening to the radio to stay awake because it was at nighttime. And there's a break in the music, and the guy said, just breaking away to announce that Harry Chapin has been killed in a car accident. And I don't know if you know Harry Chapin, but he's a very good singer. Um, he had many songs that were very good. Taxi. One of the ones that they played right away was Cats in the Cradle. And Cats in the Cradle was talking about a father who was always away while his son was growing up. And I have to tell you, I started crying, and I could not see out the window between the rain and my tears. I had to pull over for about an hour, composed myself, and then drove up. So this was on a Friday night. Monday morning, I went into the president and I said, I'm resigning. Can't do this anymore. And went to the next job. So that I didn't have to be away from my family for so long. Unfortunately, I still had to be away sometime because what I became good at was fixing things, we call it multi-unit location companies. Companies that had locations across the country, sometimes into the U.S. But as I got higher up in the corporate structure, I could control the days I was away. So the next job I got, I'd only be away for maybe 2 days at maximum, and usually in the middle of the week. And then I was there at that company for about 2 years, and I got a call from a headhunter who said, listen, there's this company that really wants to hire you. They've heard about you. I don't know how they hear about you. I have no idea how these things happen. And then they want to talk to you about joining them. So I met with those guys. They offered me a job as a senior director in the company, and originally started in Toronto. There for 6 months in Toronto, and then they were having a problem with the division out in Western Canada. And they said, listen, we need you to go out and fix this area. And so I got transferred to Calgary. We had, the company was a convenience store chain. So 7-Eleven that you see in China now, you would have seen around Nanjing quite a bit when they opened up quite a few of them. 7-Eleven was a top competitor of ours in Canada. And I went out to fix Western Canada. And so I was there for a couple of years. And in 2 years, we turned everything around. And we went from, I think, when I got there, we made $62,000 profit that year. I got there in September. Our year end was the end of December, and we made 62,000. The following year, we made 6.7 million. And the following year after that, we were up about 9 million. And so it was getting kind of routine and boring, to tell you the truth. And so I went home. I started looking at golf lessons. Now, I don't like golf, but once in a while I'd have to golf for charity tournaments and so on. And so I started looking at golf. I was driving home and I was thinking, golf, Tony, are you crazy? What are you taking golf for? And so I got home and I sat down with my wife and I said, I think I've got to quit this job. She goes, are you crazy? Yeah, are you crazy? You're making good money. Everything's stable. Are you nuts? I said, well, I'm bored. I'm like, there's nothing to do. Everything's going smoothly. What am I going to do now? It's like this. So anyway, I got my name out there, and I got a call from another headhunter, and to help fix a company that was nationwide. That was this company, the company I was working for at that time, that convenience store chain, was nationwide, but I was only responsible for the western part of it, from Winnipeg out to Victoria. Um, and then, but this other company was a U.S.-based company. They were out of Rexburg, Idaho to begin with, and then they moved to Pittsburgh. Uh, and um, and so I went to work for them as a general manager, Canadian operations. And it was a franchise. It was my first, like the convenience store chain was a hybrid franchise, not quite, okay? But it was the first time I was working with people who weren't really employees of the company. And I got to understand a bit about how that structure works. And then, but when I joined this other company, it was completely franchised. And so I learned quickly about how to deal with franchisees and what they needed and what we needed. And the company was owned by a very large investment capital group out of Boston. Um, and what they did was they bought companies that were losing money, and then they'd fix them and sell them again. So I was tasked with turning around the Canadian operations. And so about 3 months in, after I figured out what was going on, and talked to the franchisees and found out what they needed and what their beefs were about, why things weren't going the right way, I had a meeting with all of them, and I said, okay, what do you want me to do? You tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. You sure? I said, yeah. You tell me what you want to do. I'll do it. I'm in charge of Canadian operations. I will do it. They won't let you do it. I said, what do you want? So they told me what they wanted. I said, okay, I will do what you want. Here's what I want you to do for me. And you do what I want you to do for me, and we'll all be happy. You'll be making money, and the company will be making money, and everybody will be happy. So I went back to our house, and we had a huge warehouse because they had to buy the product from us. The product that they sold within their operations, they had to buy from us. But some of the product, they had to carry all the product, but some of the product was not fast selling. They might sell one a month, and they'd have to buy 40 of them. So they have 40 months supply sitting on their shelves. That's a lot of money tied up that they can't use for other things. So what they wanted me to do was to ship them one. If they wanted to order one, ship one. So that's pretty simple. So I talked to my boss, who was the vice president of operations for this unit. And I said, listen, I'm going to go unit packaging, unit shipping. He goes, what? You're crazy. You got to ship by. I said, no. I said, you want me to turn this thing around? You let me do what I need to do. He said, well, okay, well, we'll call it a test. I said, okay, we'll call it a test. I said, so we went to unit ordering immediately. The franchisees couldn't believe it. They're calling me, are you serious? How did you get this done? I said, now remember what your promise was to me. And so I'd say within 9 months, it wasn't more than 9 months, Canadian operations were profitable. They were profitable. And so the guys down in the States said, hey, could you come down and help us? We'd like you to take over Washington, Oregon, which is in the northwest of the U.S., and Montana, and see if you can turn them around. I said, well, can I have a free hand? Like I have in Canada. So what do you mean a free hand? Well, I want to meet with the franchisees and find out what they need and deal with it. Oh, you can't meet with the franchisees. Legal problems. I said, legal problems? What are you talking about? I said, you can't, down here, they'll take us to court and sue us. I said, well, do you want to turn around those areas or don't you? Yeah, but you can't have. You can't have. I said, but then I can't help you. if you can't make commitments to the franchisees to help them do better, then what's the use? Um, but at the same time as this was happening, the Alberta government had decided to um, pass new legislation, franchise legislation, that was going to be very, very restrictive for franchisors, companies who were franchised in the province. And so the guy who had recruited me for this company called me and said, listen, we're getting together a bunch of people, franchisors, and wondering if you'd come to the meeting. I think you should be there. So we go to this meeting, and it was kind of the inaugural meeting of this thing. There was some franchise lawyers there, other companies, presidents of other companies, and so on, who were franchising. And anyway, as we're talking there, somehow I get elected the president of this new organization. And another guy from a car rental company was elected vice president. And so I go up and talk with the director of franchising legislation in the provincial government. And I convince them that it would be not in the best interest of the province to have restrictive legislation, restrictive laws that would prevent franchisors from coming in. Because without franchisors coming in, there's going to be certain industries that won't be represented in Alberta. It'll be the only place. I said, why would you want to do that? Why don't we instead rewrite the legislation that opens it up, but make the penalties for not being ethical very, very high. I said, punish the guys who are breaking the laws. Don't punish the industry. He goes, that makes a lot of sense. So they strike a committee. I was on that. Another franchisor, a lawyer who dealt mostly with franchisees, a lawyer who dealt mostly with franchisors, and a couple of franchisees from large corporations. And we met regularly, and we wrote the new legislation, the new law that passed, that opened it all up. Of course,
Which year was this?
this was in 1993 to 1996.
I wasn't even born.
So, so anyway, obviously I got well known within the franchise circles because of that. The guy who was the vice president invites me for lunch and said, look, he says, this was 1996, late 95, I think. And he says, our company's having some difficulties. There's 3 of us are shareholders, and we've talked about you. I've told them about you and what you do and how you're able to get things done. And we'd like you to join us, and we're willing to give you 25% of the company to join us. Just join us, we'll pay you this amount, but we'll also give you 25% of the company. Okay. So I joined them, and now I become, a fairly significant shareholder in a company, and we're private. We're a private company, but we're franchised. And so I set about growing the company, because the company had at one time had over 200 franchisees, and it was down to about 65. And so I started doing what I usually did, and we within 3 years, I guess, we grown up to about 165 locations, 65, 70. I can't remember the exact number. It was in that general vicinity. And we decided that we were going to take the company public, so do an IPO. And I have to tell you, it was a mistake. It seemed like it was very exciting at the time, going from being a privately held company by essentially 4 shareholders to going public and be hitting the big time. But we didn't really understand the implications. When you go public, so when we're private, all my friends and my neighbors knew that I was president of this company, of this private company. It was well known in Canada. Um, and they knew that, and they knew by this time that I was a shareholder of it. And so they would ask me how things are going and so on. I could tell them. I could tell them exactly what was going on. And when we went public, a lot of them bought shares. In the initial public offering, a lot of them get a chance to buy what we call the president's friends shares. And so a lot of them bought shares in the company. And like in my neighborhood, like we lived in a cul-de-sac, and we'd have parties and picnics outside and so on, and we set up tables, and so after we went public, we're sitting there having this party, and they started asking me questions about the company. I said, I go into work early in the morning, and I leave at 6 o'clock, and I come home. Well, we want to know about the company. I said, I'm telling you. Right. So what do you mean? I said, well, sorry, guys, I can't tell you about the company. Because if I tell you about the company, then I'm divulging information that you have that other shareholders do not have, and that's illegal. I can no longer talk about the company. I had to keep it to myself. And having to deal with the Securities Commission and the Stock Exchange, that was very stressful. I lasted until, I think it was 2000, so about 2001 maybe, because I'd been there for 6 years. So I guess I joined them in 95. I'd been there for 6 years, and I parted ways with the company, sold my shares, and started my own business. Decided to go into consulting. It was just, I'm the kind of guy that if I don't have something new, back then anyway, if I didn't have something new, I just got bored. And I wasn't happy being bored. And so, and because, I got some awards from the National Franchise Association. I got some awards from the province. At the same time, I was also heavily involved in the local community as chairman of the planning commission for building houses and any building within the city there. I live south of Calgary in a place called Okotoks, and so I chaired the planning commission for 9 years, and I chaired the appeals commission, which is the next step up, for 6 years. So at the same time, I was doing that, in the community basis, and it wasn't a paid thing. There's outside volunteers that helped the council, the town council, manage the build out of the city. So I was doing that. So I had a lot of things going outside of business. But then I decided that if I start my own company, I'll always have fresh companies to help. I'll never be bored. And I was right. So I announced that I went to a conference, went to the annual conference of the Canadian Franchise Association, and let everybody know that I was no longer going to be with the car rental company. And I was walking out the door, literally. And one of the guys said, "Hey, can I talk to you? I need your help." So right away, I had business. And I did that for 10 years, just about 10 years, maybe 9. But what it was I would take over a company. Sometimes it'd be a startup. They couldn't afford to hire a full-time president, so I'd be their half-time president. And I'd usually have 2 companies that I was dealing with at the same time. And I'd be president of both. And my purpose was to build out the company to the point where they could hire a full-time president, and then I'd go somewhere else. In 2005, I got involved with the company, and I became president of two of their divisions. One was called Megadocs, and the other was called Talasium. Megadocs was an online platform uh, selling legal documents. And we sold a lot of legal documents into China. Oh, how? Yeah, to this day, we had some documents from Hong Kong, but we sold a lot. I still don't understand why they were buying them. Because they were Hong Kong documents and they were North American documents and European documents, but a lot of our business came from China. And the other company, the other division was a bank, a quasi bank, so a financial institution. Um, and so it was they were private, and then uh, you know I'm working with both. Then we decide that we take Malaysian public. And I thought, I remember this story. So, but that in order to do uh, what the CEO wanted, we needed to have a publicly traded portion of the company. And so we did what was called a reverse takeover of a company that was public, but was not functional. And so I got back into that stress situation. But the good news about this place was that I didn't have to travel. So like when I went into business for myself, I traveled a little bit, but most of the time I was in and around Calgary because the companies I was representing or worked for were in that Calgary area. And so it was a good time to kind of just mellow out. Um, and so, but you know, with anything that you're doing, with any relationship, things kind of di diverse. I don't know. They just, and my first wife and I eventually were doing different things, doing our own things. I was doing one thing, she was doing another thing, and our interests diverged to the point where we decided that it was better for us to live apart. Um, and then that was 2009. Um, and my oldest son was teaching in Xi'an. He'd been teaching there for 6 months. And he came back, and at that time, I'm thinking, oh, maybe I should make a big change in my life. I made this change, no longer married. Maybe I should make a bigger change. And I was talking to my son, and he said, Dad, you should go to China. I think you'd fit right in there. You'd love China. And I
When
think the
was
Chinese,
this?
this was late 2000, this was 2009, like October. And he said, I think they'll love you, and I think you'll love them. So I said, well, it's not a bad idea. So I decided to enroll in classes to learn how to be a teacher of English as a second language. And I've taken those classes at nighttime, and I was doing my regular job. On weekends, I volunteered at an immigration center to help new immigrants to Canada learn English. And then at the same time as I was doing all this, I was also president of the Alberta Liberal Party. And still involved with the community part as chairman of the appeal board. And in April, I was ready to apply for jobs. 2010, I applied for a job at that technical college. My eldest son was getting married, and they decided to get married in Hawaii. So I was in Hawaii. I did an interview with the representative from the technical college while I was in Hawaii attending my son's wedding, and we were on the phone for 2 minutes, no more than 2 minutes, and they hired me. And I arrived in China on August 28th, 2010. Met at the airport by this 28-year-old young woman. And she drove me, well, she had a driver, and they drove me to my apartment, which happened to be right across from where she was living with her mother and father. and about 20-minute walk from the college, um, and 5 minutes walk from this guy who'd become a good friend of mine, who's one of my colleagues. Um, and like really, I, I got into my apartment, and she took me around to different places, and I started feeling like I was home. It was such a strange feeling, It was like I'd come home. And so then I'm walking. I remember my first day walking to the school, uh, and there was this old man walking his grandson to his kindergarten that way, and he was coming back, and so we're encountering, and so I learned to say ni hao. So when I got here, I knew exactly 3 words: ni hao, ni hao.
That is
Those
2 words.
those are the words I knew when I got to China.
Yeah.
So I know ni hao meant hello. And so when he was coming, I said, ni hao. And he went, what? Who is this stranger talking to me? And so we just passed by each other. And every day I'd see him, I say the same thing. But, within a week, he said ni hao first back to me. And my first Sunday in China, I walked down to the Shituan of Dachang, and I'm in the middle of the piazza there, and I'm looking around, I'm thinking, where's the toilets? But there's no toilets. I'm looking for the drain, maybe a drain going through this plaza. No, there's no drain. I'm thinking, what's that awful smell? I couldn't find it. So on Monday, this was Sunday. On Monday, when I get to the school, we had this common office, and I said to them, I said, I was downtown yesterday, and there's this awful smell, but I couldn't find where it's coming from. And this guy who I told you lives 5 minutes away from my apartment starts laughing, and he says, yes. He says, you're just like every foreigner. Your nose came nose to smell with what? Toya, with what? Cho
Not
tofu.
sure.
Cho tofu.
Ah, okay. But
I said, what? You guys eat that
cuisine that
stuff?
smells a little bit
He goes,
strange.
oh, it smells bad, but it's delicious. Okay,
Yeah, but still, like people
for anybody who's watching
are
this, if
not.
somebody tells you that it smells bad but it tastes delicious, they're lying to you.
But it does taste
Oh
delicious.
my God. So, it took a while. It took a while.
I mean, if you
Uh,
got the authentic ones.
yeah, I got the authentic ones. Okay, so
Okay. Um,
I'll tell you when I did eventually try it. Okay. So anyway, now
so you,
you
you
see,
haven't tried it. You haven't tried
I
it.
hadn't tried it I didn't try it then, but I have tried it twice. Okay. Just to
Okay.
give you,
All
just to
right.
let you know, at least I persevere. Okay. And I have to tell you, when I was in China, I have eaten a lot of stuff that I wouldn't normally eat, and they were all good, except for there's three things: chou tofu, chou mian, chou mian tiao, and chou yu. Those three things, no. But everything else, like I've had in the Lijiang, I had I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 different types of worms and grubs and so on, fried with la jiao. Oh, they were so good. So I've eaten chung, I've eaten, like I've eaten all sorts of stuff. So it's not because I won't try stuff, but everyone, when they say it tastes great, smells bad, no, don't run away.
I mean,
So
we we are a very large country, so
Yeah,
there are different type of tastes for different
it's
kinds of
true.
areas.
True. And
Um,
I have
yeah.
to tell you, I've liked the food everywhere I've gone. I haven't been to Inner Mongolia and I haven't been to the northeast to the
You
northeast yet.
haven't been to Inner Mongolia?
No, I haven't. We wanted to get there, but then and we had our trip planned, but then this little thing called COVID hit. Yeah. And so COVID stopped us from doing a whole bunch of stuff. And then of course I left in 2022, so now
All right.
2023.
So
So
let's get back on track.
okay.
You
Okay,
were
so get back on
saying
track.
that
So,
you
like I wanna go back because you were indicating, how things, how decisions are made, how I make decisions that get me to where I go. Um, Sometimes, just external factors. You think about like if I hadn't put my name out within the headhunting community when I was looking for a job to leave the convenience store chain, I would never have been recruited by that particular guy, who, by the way, became a close friend of mine. And if he hadn't recruited me to that other company, um, he wouldn't have invited me. I wouldn't have been invited to that franchise council formation meeting, and I wouldn't have met a whole bunch of people there. So, if it wasn't for that thing happening at that particular time. I think, really, it's been it's been just luck. It's just been kind of luck that I've made decisions for myself at particular times that happen to have worked out. They just worked out. They weren't decisions I made because I was somehow inspired some way. They were decisions I made because I was bored and I wanted to get into something a bit more exciting because I'd done the job I needed to have done, and now it's too easy. Everything's doing so. So it wasn't some master plan. It was almost like you play ping pong. I think ping pong, pinball. Have you ever played pinball machine, and the ball goes all over the place? Well, that's kind of what I did. I go to this company, I go to that company, I go to that company. It wasn't because I had this master plan of what I'm going to do. Like it's just like I went here and I met somebody, and then they called me and said, "Hey, um, really could use your talents over here." Like that the two companies that I had, the last two companies that I was president of in Canada, um, I met the CEO uh, at a networking meeting, breakfast networking meeting. I'd be invited to his networking meeting to give a talk about franchising. Because as I said, I was well known as someone who knew franchising very well. And so I'm giving this talk about franchising, and this guy was a lawyer. Um, and so afterwards, we start talking, we exchange business cards and so on. And he noticed that I was a consultant. Of course, he knew that from my talk. And then so he invited me for lunch, and we started talking some more. And we got to know each other a little bit. And probably it was 6 months later that he asked me to join the group. Um, but if I hadn't gone and given that speech, I wouldn't have met him. You know. So again, it wasn't a master plan. It was just opportunities presented themselves, and I made decisions either to take the opportunity or not to take the opportunity. And when I made the decision to take the opportunity, I just happened to get lucky and made the right decision. Because in life, you can make decisions that could go bad. And I've been fortunate that I've never made a decision that went bad for me. Um, and it kind of reminds me a little bit about the class I took when I was doing my Master's of Business Administration degree. I had this professor of management science who said, if in business you're not making any mistakes, then you're not making enough decisions. Because you can't be right all the time. But in my life, I've been very lucky. I've been very lucky. My decision to go to China was probably the best decision I ever made. I can say that without reservation. And I made lots of good decisions in my life. But I'd say going to China was probably the best decision I ever made. I met some of the best people in my life who are still in my life, like yourself. Um, I met some people I don't like. I met one person who I downright hate. But, you know,
Who is that?
99, uh, 99% of the people I met, um, enriched my life so
I
much.
think you have a very good mentality. You
But
have a
not
very
like,
positive mentality.
well, that's true, but my positiveness, I remember it goes back to my youth when I was living in my small town where I saw everybody helping each other. And so that did make me feel positive that there's, goodness in people's hearts. So, yeah, but coming to China was really, and I want to stress that it's the best decision I ever made.
You are
Um,
also one of the best professors I've ever studied with
yeah. Mm,
because
mm,
not only about your professional skills and whether it's speaking English or
mm,
writing guide, but for your extra efforts outside the class, right?
mm,
We were
mm,
holding English corners in the English department, and you kind of take on the responsibility to organize these events that are not originally assigned to you.
mm,
And we were all very grateful as students, and we had a very warm and kind and helpful little group. And we kind of, it's part of my best memories from my
mm.
undergraduate days and then university. And I was wondering about this part of memory. So why were you thinking about holding this event in the first place? And
Mm.
what were your like response to all these years' efforts?
Um, you know, my first term, my first term at Nanda, I met this guy. He was a student um, who was not an English major. And he came to my first oral class. And he and I kind of hit it off really right away, right away. And like from the first class, it ended at lunchtime. So we went to lunch together. And we sat there, we're just talking and so on. And then some of the other students from the class saw us sitting there and they came over and sat at our table and we're just talking. And I thought, we should do this every day. Just come at lunchtime here, take over this table, and we'll just speak English. You can practice English, just talking. Because we were having a good time talking. We're just exchanging ideas and just come back. But so it was kind of like it wasn't like I planned it. It was just like this organic thing that happened. Okay. And that guy that I met took classes from me every single term. He didn't need to. Some of them he never registered for. Um, and you know him, of course. You know him. And
Who is this guy?
well, you know him very well. You know him. I'll tell you in a minute. But like uh, he works. He right now he lives in Hangzhou, and he has a very close relationship with a woman who lives in Suzhou. And I keep telling him they should get married. And he said, "Well, we need the money." I said, "Well, yeah, money comes later. You should get married." So you know Zhou Chen. Uh, so Zhou Chen, that's who it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
Yeah. So and it really you can thank him for English Corner because if we hadn't gone for lunch together and the other students hadn't come, I, I you know I may have done it because I had English corners at the other school, at my first school, except that the students there liked partying too much. And so very few came to my English corners at that school. And so eventually I had to give them up because I was sitting there by myself. Um, because they invite me to their parties. Yeah. They all liked they it was a different atmosphere at the Dachang Technical School. It's called it used to be called Nanjing Chemical College. And I told them before I left there that the year I left, you should change this because this is more than a chemical college because they had everything. They had all sorts of different disciplines they were teaching. I said, you should call this a technical college. Oh, we can't do that. The history of it, it started in 1958, and the history of it was about chemistry, and there's a big statue of the guy who started, who was a chemical plant company leader who started this college. Year later, they changed it to Nanjing Polytechnical Institute. They realized that, yeah, you got to go on. So anyway, the English corner at night, and I got to tell you, okay, English corner was as much for the students as it was for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, um, you remember some of the conversations we had, and how much fun we had, how many laughs we had. When Mafei's mother sent us the rats for us to eat at Christmas time. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was striking. I was also shocked.
Yeah,
Okay.
you remember that? So I mean, we had some really good times. The parties at my place, um, like they were all. You look back at those memories, and if you were part of that, and you don't have a warmness in your heart from it, I don't know. I don't know what kind of memories you could have. Like for me, when I think back at that, I'm always smiling. There always is happiness in my soul, because yeah, I remember when Caillou told us she had a 5-year plan. And I don't know if it was you or if it was um oh Jesus, her name just was in my head and just went the other way. She's from Chengdu. Studied up there in Beijing as well. Damn it, come on. Anyway, we're filming it, and I was saying, yeah, this is the 5-year girl. And the person who at this time she was calling me, she was saying, what was her name? Damn it. Anyway, this wasn't about Caillou, it was about her. And she's saying, Liar, liar. And I have it on film. I have the video. And every time I want to laugh, I play that video. It's such a good time. So you might say, okay, yes, I wanted to help students be in a situation where they could talk freely and, be able to express themselves in English in a non-academic way. Because, any language is not academic. It's about communication at the street level. And to do that, you have to have, some place where some place or some medium that you can use that expression. And so English Corner was the best part. Now, I have to tell you that my wife would text me. Like if we were beyond 10 o'clock, as sometimes happened, she'd say, you coming home? She'd text me and say, are you coming home? So,
Yeah, I do remember we have such long conversations that
yes,
everybody was sharing their most intimate stories, and
yes,
we really connected a
yeah,
lot. And I've made some lifelong friends
yes,
in this
you know,
English corner.
yeah.
And I was wondering, like, cause students were sharing a lot of their struggles from your
Mhm,
perspective of a professional who had been in all kinds of industries
mhm.
and who have had a lot of practical experience. What were your perspective on like Chinese college students' struggles?
They weren't too much different than the struggles that I had when I was at university. The difference for me was that I had to work part-time to keep making money to pay for my university. And so I had struggles. I had struggles with because I had to study, I had to maintain my grades, and I had to make money because my family could not afford to pay for my university. It was just simple as that. I knew that. I was well aware of that when I made the decision to go to university. Um, and so my struggles were not that much different from the academic side, from the interpersonal side. Um, the difference that I didn't have, struggles I didn't have, um, were the stresses that you guys felt of having to have top grades all the time. It was a huge competition that I didn't have. Like in Western universities, we don't have that sense of huge competition to be at the top. Now, some of that is maybe self-driven. Um, for my Chinese students, a lot of it I think was family-driven. Um, but we never had that. I never experienced that part of it. And frankly, I really struggle with trying to help you guys with that because, you know, most of you experienced that all your lives. Um, and we never did. Like I pushed myself to get good grades when I was in, any grade that I was in because I knew what I wanted. When I was young, I already knew that I wanted to go to university. Um, I don't know how I knew. I just knew I wanted to go to university. Unlike my brothers and sisters, okay, who didn't know, you know, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to higher learning. Um, and so I pushed myself, but my parents never pushed me. I never had that family pressure, you know. Um, so I struggled because there's some students that came to me one-on-one whose parents were really oppressive. It was a struggle because I don't understand why parents would do that. My sons always did
Well,
well at
it's
school. My sons did well at school. I
typical
never,
our
yeah,
society.
but I never pressed my sons to push themselves. They did well at school on their own. Supported them. Um, they didn't have a lot of homework, but they knew that they did their homework. First hour they came home from school, they did their homework, and then they go out and play. So I didn't know how to deal with that. That was a difficult situation because I felt at a loss to give that kind of advice. And the other struggle you guys get is when Spring Festival came around, you had to go home. And for some reason, when you're in high school, you could not have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. As soon as you get to university, by the time you get to Spring Festival, you should have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And a lot of my students said, "Oh, I don't want to go home. Like my in-laws, my relatives are going to bug me, ask me if I got a girlfriend." Most of the guys were this, not the girls. Not, I don't have a girlfriend. I said, "Well, lie. I can't lie." I said, "I'd lie. I'd tell them I have a girlfriend. What's her name? Get a picture." I said, "It's her." Oh, yeah, but then they want me. No, okay. So yeah, so look, I don't know. Relatives will be relatives, and for some reason, and this happened at all. Like when I started teaching in China, my first class at the college was like that. I know they're going to ask me, what should I do? Well, either get a boyfriend or girlfriend or be prepared. Um, so I guess that would be the other thing. But generally speaking, everything else was easier to deal with because a lot of it was just human relation stuff. you know. Um, and I wished I could have helped you more. When
What do you
you were
mean?
going, but when you were going through that particular difficult period, I wish I could have helped you more. Um, yeah.
I'm okay. I feel like I have to walk some part of my path alone to
Hmm.
truly learn the lessons. If I was
Yeah.
relying on external help all the time, I wouldn't grow.
Well, it's true. That is true. But there's times when external help can uplift our spirits, and maybe gives that extra push to go on our own. Because sometimes we're reluctant to do that. um, yeah. So, and I've been fortunate that students have trusted me enough to come to me when they've had problems, um, and they trusted me enough to take my advice.
So you're
Yeah.
almost the psychological consultant for the entire
Um,
English department.
I don't know about that, but yeah, um, I certainly was, you know, I felt privileged to be in that position, really. Um, and I have to tell you, there are days when I am melancholy because I miss those days. We can't go back to those days because we all move on. Life goes on, and everybody moves to different things and so on. But when I think back, and I have a good life now, you know, and I hope you come to visit. Hope you come to visit. I have a great spot. It's not quite finished yet, but by the time you come to visit, it will be. Um, and life is pretty good right now, but it lacks it lacks the emotional connectivity that we had, that I had with my students. I teach now, but it's not the same. The I still enjoy teaching, but it's not as it's not it's not as fun. Um,
Yeah, I do
yeah.
remember like English corners sort of become a routine,
Hmm.
a home for a lot of people
Yeah.
where we kind of found a corner in a cafe on the campus and we just talked for 4, 5, 6 hours
Yeah.
straight.
Yeah.
And you would bring the bread or
Hmm.
other desserts you
Hmm.
baked,
Hmm.
and we would share it. And it was such a memorable time.
Yeah.
And I do remember like we have PhDs, we have graduate students, masters and undergrad. We're all
Hmm.
together. We're from
Hmm.
different majors. We're talking about different life stories and different sorts of knowledge. And it was really an interdisciplinary talk
Yeah.
all the time. And really, I can feel like everyone is helping the other person grow,
Hmm.
and we wish the best for another person. And it's very rare. As I realize it now, what I had was a treasure. And yeah, speaking of help, I do want to thank you for a very important opportunity you've given me before, which was illustration.
Hmm.
Like, I do call myself an illustrator
Hmm.
now,
Hmm. You
but
should, because you
my
did a very good
first,
job. You did a very
I,
good
I
job
did,
illustrating.
I did
Yeah.
a lot of commission in my
Hmm.
grad school, but my first illustration project was your children's storybook.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was
And it
very
was,
grateful for
and it
that.
was, and it was one of my best artists who did it.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, for some reason, the last 3, 4 years, my creative juices have dried up. I haven't written a story for 4 years, but I'm going to start writing again once I finish the house, probably in the spring. I have some stories in my head, but they're not children's stories. They're short stories that I want to write about experiences I had in China, um, about people I've met in China. Um, so, and I want to put them together in a book of short stories. I wrote one. I don't know if I told you guys about it, called The Knife. And
You
it was,
haven't.
yeah. So it was I used to, on Saturday mornings, I would ride my bicycle, um, at the beginning. Then I started walking. Ride my bicycle from where we lived at Gulo campus down to the Yangtze River. And on Saturday mornings, there was I'm not sure if it's still there because they kind of developed it into this pub and restaurant area now. But there used to be a flea market um, along the riverbank, not the Yangtze River, but the other, the Qinghai down there. And so I parked my bike and I go looking around, and there was a lady selling. I should have bought it. Selling a Chinese army knife. Like I was going back home. I remember I was going back home. And so I picked up this knife and I held it in my hand. And almost automatically, a story started coming to my head, you know? And I jump on my bike and I rush home and I start writing it, handwriting it, because the story's in my head and I'm trying to get it on paper. Um, and the story was about this young guy, 17 years old, um, who was fighting the Japanese. His group was fighting the Japanese, and um, and they were up around Baoling. Um, and he got, somehow was separated from his troop, and they could hear the people in Baoling being slaughtered. Um, and got separated, and he was scared, and he was in some bushes, and all of a sudden, right in front of him, was this Japanese soldier. He took his knife and he slit that soldier's throat. And as the soldier fell to the ground, turned his head, and he saw that it was just a boy no older than him. And when I start the story was, he was sitting on the bench, looking out across the Yangtze River. And at the end is I sat there, both of us, tears flowing down our cheeks, looking across the Yangtze River. Because that act of killing that boy, even though he was the enemy, impacted that man for the rest of his life. And so, I'm not sure that story is actually better than the one that Vochen wrote for one of my creative writing classes. Because I think I'm 8 years old is probably one of the better short stories that I've read. Written by a computer science major, not an English major.
Yeah, I do agree.
You know? Yeah.
Um, I'm not sure if this question is appropriate, but I do want to ask, um, do you have any regrets in life?
Uh, yeah, I think we all have regrets. I've made some stupid decisions in my life. I hurt some people that I shouldn't have hurt. I regret those actions. So much so that they bring tears to my eyes that I was so stupid to hurt people. You can't take those back. You know, you can apologize, but you can't take it back. So I try to live my
What
life,
was your,
try
uh,
to live my life so I don't hurt people. Don't make stupid decisions that impact people negatively. And then you don't have to worry about it. But when I was younger, I was stupid. And I wasn't always as considerate as I should have been. And I wish I could go back and change that. Go ahead.
I
Ask
mean, I
me.
can relate to this. I'm not sure what's your first impression of me, but I would describe myself as a little bit like edgy person, and I do pose challenging questions sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and it does make people uncomfortable. in certain
Uh,
situations.
well, if
Whether
you,
I realize it or
mm,
not,
mm,
I did hurt many people in the
yeah,
past.
yeah,
I do think so.
yeah,
And
well,
I'm becoming to realizing this more and more after I did a lot of internships, and I do change my mindset into another direction where I
mm,
do want to be considerate and, you know,
mm,
empathy and
empathize with people. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and I'm not sure what your impression of me was
Ah,
when I was a student.
you were always one of the special students. You know why? You know why? Because you may not believe this. Um, there's three of you. Among all my students, four of you. Among all my students, three females and one male who have a pure heart. You have a pure heart. And that's why you hurt so much. Because of that pure heart. And other people take advantage of that pure heart. There was three of you, well, four of you total. And you know the other ones. You know the others. Who have suffered a little bit more than they needed to suffer because of it. Um, but it's because of that. And if we didn't have people with pure hearts, we'd have a bad world.
Do I look
I
like
think,
I've suffered a lot? I don't think so.
well, no,
I
you
think
have
I look
suffered.
happier.
No, right now you look very good because you've gone through the suffering. You've gone through the suffering. Now you look, uh, like you're content with where you are. Okay, which makes my heart feel so good to see that. Okay, but you can't deny that you have suffered. Yes, because I know you've
I
suffered.
feel okay.
Yeah, but now
Um,
you're see, suffering obviously can make us stronger. It definitely makes us stronger. And it can take us to a place where we are very comfortable with ourselves and with our environment. And right now you look like you're at that place. Um, but you know, um, without people like you, Toya, seriously, the world would not be as good as it is. And the world is full of bullshit people these days, bullshit leaders. And it's only because of the goodness in people's hearts, like yourself, like myself, and like some of the other people that I've met, that the world is where it is on the kind side. So,
my perspective on people did change a lot in
mm,
this 3 or 4 years.
mm,
Um, I could say that I'm more scared of people or more distrust, distrusting others
mm,
nowadays than, let's say, 3 years ago.
mm,
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a necessary change.
Let me maybe put in a different perspective for you, because I don't think you distrust people, but you're hesitant to trust people. It's not a matter of distrust. You will trust people, but you're hesitant to give that trust, which is a good thing. Because when you give trust too quickly, that's when you get hurt. And so you need to have that hesitancy. My wife says that I'm like that. You know, I, I'm hesitant to give my trust to people. She is not, but I am. And I said, you know what? Um, I give trust to people when I think they deserve my trust. Okay. And I think nothing that I think for some of us, it is important that we do that, that we're hesitant Doesn't mean we don't trust people. It means that we're hesitant to trust people.
Yeah, like right now, I'm in a very important stage of my life where I'm supposed to make a
Mhm.
decision between whether I go to an academia or industry, like whether I choose to
Mm,
take a 9 to 5 job or do I continue research. Um, and my choice,
mm,
my inclination is to find a job, which is
mm,
very surprising because I've never imagined myself outside
mm.
academia. But and that's so
Uh,
interesting
what kind of
because
job? What kind of job are you looking for? Would you want to get into?
I mean I've tried different types of job, like
Mm,
in research institutes or galleries, museums,
mm,
publishers, and uh, NGOs, and
mm,
a lot of jobs, internships, and
mm,
I think maybe I would still choose literature and arts in the
mm,
end,
mm. So,
probably.
so something in a
And
museum or what? Museum or
something to do with words
with words? Yeah.
and visual arts, I think.
Hmm.
Publishers, probably, or
Yeah, yeah,
editor.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm. Of course, that's changing too. So it'd be more like online stuff. Yeah, one of the nice things I like about Italy is that all the newsstands that used to be up and around in China and then mostly closed down. In Italy, we still have them. We're still selling, magazines and like written stuff. There's one spot in Rome. They used to be the old book corner, and they cleaned it all up. But they maintained this, so they got these used to be like old kind of sheds and so on, but now they've got these nice new like kind of little houses, along that same street that is no vehicles are allowed on there, and they sell books, like all old books and all sort. Like I still like that. It's unfortunate that most stuff that we read now has become um, kind of integrated into the computer systems versus paper. But I love paper books. I hope it never dies. We have bookstores here really thriving. We have bookstores everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying different kinds of career
Mhm.
path outside academia because
Mhm.
my perspective on academia has changed a lot.
Yeah.
And I used to
Yes.
hold a lot of ideals about it. I mean, I still haven't given up. I still haven't, yeah, I still haven't given up on these ideals that I hold.
Hmm.
And I do think there's truth in research, but it doesn't have to take the form of a competitive and
Hmm.
in the current system.
Yeah.
And
Well, I, I hear see one of the things about academia in China, maybe in the rest of the world too. I don't know because they don't work in even though I teach at one of the universities here, I don't really work in academia per se. Um, is that you need to publish stuff
yeah,
or you
publish or
lose your job.
perish, right?
Yeah, yeah, like or you lose your job. Yeah, I can't. I couldn't put up with that pressure. That pressure would kill me. Public, I have to publish it. And what am I publishing? Is it really worth? Will it add to anything to the general knowledge of for humanity, or am I just going to be putting out bullshit in order to keep my job? Yeah, so but I think the additional pressures that you'd feel from that kind of concept probably makes academia less attractive. Yeah.
My
But
hope would be that I can. You first.
no, go ahead. But there are a lot of outside the academia things that you could do that would maintain your creative juices and give you what you want. I think what you want to do is you want to stay stimulated,
Yeah,
stimulated.
exactly. I want to be I want to be creative.
Mm,
I want to be creative. But the problem is, I feel like academia doesn't encourage creativity.
It
um,
stifles it now. It stifles it. You have to produce.
you have to, you have to, there's rules. You
Mm,
once told me to play with the system, right?
yes, yes. You have to work in the system. Okay, work with the system, and you'll get what you want to get. But when you want to be creative, when you want to, keep yourself stimulated and live a really good life, that structure will kill you. Because if you have to produce something every year that's going to get published, all you're doing is you're writing to a set formula in order for it to be published. And academic writing sucks. I don't know if you ever read some of the stuff that they write. I mean, I have read some dreadful stuff that is published in journals. So that's not creative. It's really they do it because they know the format that's required and that will be approved. You know, I've edited the final edits before it before they send it in to the publication, and I'm thinking, wow, this is such crap. And I'm helping them get this published. You know, unless it's like a medical or scientific thing, those you need to get published because you get that information out there for other people in that field to know what's going on and what's being done. But what can you possibly look at Jonathan? I really like Jonathan. Okay, he's writing shit about medieval whatever. What is that going to add to the general knowledge of society? Okay, does it matter what the sheriff of medieval England did? Really? But, you know, he gets published. So that's the
I mean, I
problem
do
with,
think medieval England matters.
nah, what does it matter? What does it matter today? Does it really matter today?
If you stop talking about it, you would forget about it, right? And
Well,
then
yeah,
part of
yeah.
the history would be erased.
Well, okay. What can you tell me about the Qin dynasty? The Qin, not the Qing, the Qin, the first one, the first emperor that unified all of China. What can you tell me? What can you tell me about the Zhou? Nothing, but it's there. It's there, right? It's part of your history. The song is part of your history. The tongue is part of your history. You know that. You don't need to have the minuscule part. The sheriff of Nottingham. Yeah? You want to know the general stuff because the rest of it is really,
I disagree. I mean, I still read academic journals, even if I don't work in academia.
yeah, yeah. I want something else. Maybe I've got to the
All
point in
right.
my life when I go, ah.
But I
um,
do feel like it's two different kinds of way of
hmm,
life.
yes.
And I was talking to my friends who have graduated from NJU University like four four years ago,
Hmm.
and we were classmates. Um, I do feel for the people who go into PhD training
Hmm.
and for the people who invested their time on career development and personal development,
Hmm.
they would have a completely different way of life by the time they were 30.
Hmm. That's true.
And I was
That's
thinking
true.
about what do you want? What would this all mean when you were at that age? What exactly do you want? If you
Hmm.
destroy your health, if you destroy your interpersonal relationship, if you are just thinking about this writing paper thing 24 hour a day, and you are so anxious and you're so
Mm.
depressed to a point that all of your life is malfunctioning, what's the point of doing about it? And
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah,
That's why if I had to do that when I was teaching, I wouldn't have been teaching. Yeah. I really liked our 6 hour, sometimes 6 hour discussions in English Corner, rather than spending 6 hours trying to write a paper. Because the 6 hours in English Corner were more productive. They were meaningful.
do you think it's possible
Um,
to do independent research outside the academia?
Absolutely you can. Absolutely you can. Why not? Why not?
In what
Do you
way?
think you need to be a do you think you need to be a professor to send the research paper into an academic journal? No.
Yeah, I thought so.
No. Why? What who says? Who says you have to be a professor to send something into an academic journal about whatever? Okay, you pick a topic you like, you do research on it. It's cutting edge stuff. You do proper research, proper the footnoted and everything else, and you send it into a journal. Why wouldn't they publish it if it's good? Why wouldn't they publish it? Oh, not a professor? No, they're gonna say, hey, this is good shit. We got to get this out. You know, because it goes in for peer
Yeah.
review. They can see what it is. They can see what it is.
All right, I'll try.
You know, don't try. Don't try. Do.
Yeah,
You've heard that before too.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, look at um, you during our talk here, you can see that you know, I I think I've been lucky in my decisions. I have not made decisions for strategic purposes. I made decisions at the time based on what was happening at that time, and I continue to do that. You know, I love where I live right now. I can't tell you that I'll be here forever. I can't tell you that my wife and I won't decide that this is great, but maybe we want to do something else. Like sometime in the future, there might be a point where we decide something else is much more fun. Um, like uh, you have to make a decision based on that particular time. Right now, you have to make a decision based on where you are today and what your
Yeah.
heart tells you to do today. And you go down that path. Maybe it's right. I said, I've been lucky. Every time I took that decision, I went down a path that really was good for me. Yeah, but if it hadn't been good, I would have just changed the path. It's not the end of the world. Change the path,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So, but if you don't go down the path, you're always going to wonder. If you're down here, you say, I really want to go and do this in this particular industry. And you go there, maybe the people you're working with are a bunch of jerks. Maybe your boss is a jerk. Maybe it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be. So what? Go somewhere else. Okay? You can always if you want to go academic, you can always go into academia. You don't have to go now. You can go 5 years from now. Yeah.
Not
But
sure. The condition in China is that we only want researchers younger than 35 years old
yeah,
because we have such a large population basis
mm,
and we
mm,
don't need people
yes,
beyond the age, and it's
but
very
soon,
cruel.
no, soon they're going to realize that experience provides better results than newbies
No,
without.
they won't.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, they will. They will. Okay. The rest of the world has figured that out, you know, and they'll start realizing that young people coming right out of school, they basically have immature thoughts in terms of when it comes to not immature, underdeveloped, underdeveloped thoughts about their particular field of study or expertise. And it's only through experience and hard work, which takes years, can you say that you're fully developed and you have a fully developed understanding of your field? It's not going to come after your master's or your PhD. Just not. Look, when I started teaching, I was a terrible teacher. Okay. My students and my peers and my superiors thought I was a great teacher. Honestly, I got 2 teaching awards at my first school. They thought I was a great teacher. I don't know why they thought I was a great teacher, because when I look back, I was sucked. You know? I think, like when I think how much in my first 2 terms in Nanda, I sucked. It was only later that I became better. And I think, yeah, how could I possibly have been a good teacher when I just started in there? How could they think I was a good teacher? Were the other guys before me so much worse that I look good? Because when I do a self-evaluation, that really, like I think I had some students, because at that school, obviously the kids that went to that school did not get a high Gaokao. Okay. And I had some students, who really didn't understand English at all. I had one boy, I remember, his girlfriend, like he came from, his family owned a huge factory, and both of them were they're beautiful. Both of them were beautiful, and they came from rich families. The girl spoke English very well. The boy did not understand a word. And unfortunately, I wasn't good enough a teacher to help him. And when I think about it, and I think about that boy all the time, okay? He was like one of the first classes that I taught. And I think about that boy, well, boy's man now, they're married with kids. And I think, if I'd been as good a teacher then as I was my 3rd year teaching in Nanda, I would have been able to help him. But I sucked. And so I failed him. And yet they gave me a teaching award for it. What? I'm so undeserving of this
You
thing.
are a great teacher.
No,
You
I
are,
think
genuinely. I know.
I'm so undeserving
Because
of
I
that.
am a student.
But yeah, you were my student after I'd been teaching for 3 years or 4 years. That's why.
Okay. All right.
So what I'm trying to get across to you is that you can't possibly have a fully developed understanding of the subject area, your research area, your area of knowledge, until you've been in it for a while. Okay? I was a much better teacher in the latter parts of my teaching career at Nanda than I was at the beginning. But why? Because, I came to an understanding of what the students needed. I understood what you guys needed. And so I was able to give it to you. I was able to help you with it. But until I got to that point, I couldn't be a good teacher. I was okay. Obviously I was an okay teacher because they didn't fire me. But, if I should have got a teaching award, I should have got a teaching award after I'd been teaching at Nanda for 4 years. I think from 4 years on, I was a good teacher.
What's your standard for a good teacher? Because I feel a lot of good researchers are not really qualified in teaching.
Yeah. You have to understand what your students need. I always thought I knew what my students needed, but it wasn't really until I'd been teaching for a while that I could sense and feel what my students needed to help them to the next level, to help them be successful at the next level. And you really have to know that. To be a good teacher, you have to, it's not about, in particular, teaching English or, whether it's oral or writing. Those are technical things, you're dealing with grammar, you're dealing with vocabulary, you're dealing with structures. Really? Am I going to make a difference in your life? No. But I am going to make a difference in your life if I get you to think about, say, the cultural aspects of using English. If I get you to understand what a Secret Santa party might feel like. Okay? But if I get you to to really understand what it feels like to connect with people using communication skills in English. Now that's where you have that, the good use, the good teaching. Like I didn't start, for example, remember your first oral class with me? Were you the first? Yeah, I think the first class of each term of the freshman year oral. I always did the speed dating thing, right? I didn't start doing
Yeah.
that until my second or third year. So why did I do that? Because I thought, these kids come in here, they're coming from high school. They may have boyfriends, girlfriends, they may have had that, but most of the time, these guys, these kids are really focused on studying until 10 o'clock at night. Let's put them in a situation where they have to talk to the opposite sex multiple times within this particular time period. So yeah, I didn't start doing that at the beginning. I didn't think about it. I didn't think about how that might help you, kind of climatize to a new environment. Like, and frankly, I must say that two of the couples that interacted that first day actually got married. So,
Yeah. Congratulations.
so I mean, we went beyond the kind of breaking the ice to having this long-term relationship. So yeah,
You helped
um,
made a lot of good matchings.
yeah, well, two.
Are they still married?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I know they got married, but I don't know if they're still married. Yeah, because the divorce rate is climbing in China. So I don't know.
Okay.
I hope so. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so what's your like teaching experience in Italy? How does it
Um,
feel like
hmm.
compared with China?
Well, it's not academic teaching. My teaching is a lot of executives. Um, some people take English because they're retired and they want to learn. I have a lot of judges, lawyers, um, government people who need to learn English, um, for their jobs because part of the EU and they are going to conferences and they have to be able to speak the language, understand the language. Um, at the university, I teach the senior members of the staff because a lot of them um, are having to go international. They understand that they have to attract international students because, like everywhere else, without international students, they can't survive. And to be able to attract international students, they got to speak English. So it's different. It's not the same. It's more like I do it because I want to stay active, um, and I get the chance to interact at those levels. But it's not as fun. It's not fun. It's not as fun. It's okay, but it's not as like um like I like China was special, special.
So do you
Nanjing was
talk
special.
to your previous students? Do they still share stories with you?
Yes, yes, yeah. And obviously I don't I have some close relationships like with you and Caillou and Munira, Fei Yu, Zhou Chen, uh, Chen Kai. Um, so I think I do have those close relationships. Um, Yinan, um, so um, and sometimes some of them will still contact me and ask me for advice. Um, but I think they've matured pretty well to the point where they're very confident to make their own decisions without needing advice, just like you. You guys.
I'm still
It's made,
not confident.
yeah, like I, I've been very fortunate to be blessed with
We are the fortunate
with you
ones,
guys,
like
with you
in
guys.
the we are the fortunate ones
Mm,
because like in a very young age, we had such a good guide
mm,
who were willing to talk about worldviews,
mm,
personal development, all kinds of issues that are not discussed in class. You are very open-minded and you are very experienced,
mm.
and that helped a lot. And I do remember, like, I think it's this year or last year, like when Munira's father passed away,
Yeah, this
you
year.
sent us, like, this year, like, several friends from
Mm,
the English Corner, you sent us a message saying that she needs us now. And I believe the several of us who did receive the message did what we can to
mm,
help her.
yeah.
And that was also, I believe, very important to each of us, in the sense that I do feel even so many years have passed and we are still part of a small family.
Mm,
And
mm.
I still can't believe this family is structured around the basic connection of the English language. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's going
Well,
beyond that. And
they're climbing the mountain, climbing the mountain
yeah, yeah,
at
yeah, yeah.
nighttime.
You were taking
Uh,
us
yeah,
you were taking us to the mountains.
yeah, but you never did come to the camping with us. You didn't come
No.
camping.
Oh, I didn't go to the campaign, but I did go to the
Oh
mountains
yeah, we
several
we climbed,
ways,
yeah, yeah, we,
several
we climbed
times.
up the mountains with that. But like the one time when I took everybody camping, that was um yeah. I don't know why you didn't come. I don't know where you were.
I
Um
think I was busy writing my thesis.
maybe because yeah, I think so. I mean we have 10 maybe people, 10 up there. And it was kind of cool because it was close to Shen, um, Shenling, the campus, and we could see the metro station from the spot we were camping, but nobody could get up there unless they knew how to get there. And I just found it by accident. I found this because it's all overgrown with stuff. I just, one day I was just walking up there by myself, and I saw, oh, where does this go? And I go up there and I find, I go, whoa, what a perfect place. Once we get up here, nobody can come and bother us because that's my first thought was got to get someplace where it's safe. Because, uh, like Zhou Chan kept bugging me. Come on, you promised to take me camping. And so, yeah, so it was fun. It was fun doing those things. And there's such good memories, such good memories. And as I say, it's like, um, when I can go back and look at those and keep having smiles on my face, that's what life is about.
Yeah. And I'd be very happy to share with you a good news, which
Mm,
is like in the place that we held English Corner,
hmm.
the three-dimension cafe, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
In the exact same place, a professor I came to know last year is holding book clubs in the way
Oh,
that you did it. Yeah,
really? Cool.
um,
Yeah.
which is which makes Nanjing University a very special place for me.
Mm,
I feel
mm,
like miracles keeps happening there.
mm. But that's cool. I'm very
Yeah.
glad to hear that there's somebody that's able to step away from the usual structure of their relationship with students and get out there, put themselves out. Yeah, it's cool.
Well, do you have any questions for me?
No, no question. I just want you to make decisions based on your heart, what your heart tells you. And don't worry about them, whether they're decisions that are going to go the right way or the wrong way, because you can always change the direction. So just make those decisions that way.
Yeah.
Um, and keep that nice smile on your face. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So
It's
I
been
guess
great talking with you.
this is our discussion. Yeah, it's been great
Yeah, well,
talking to you, and you're
you
always welcome
told
back.
me, yeah, you told me that this would be 45 minutes, and we've been going for 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, I know. It's just like English Corner, right? This can goes
Yeah, it's true.
on and
Yes,
on.
exactly. I'll be happy to come back anytime if you want to have me back about something else. Haven't talked about my farm. Haven't talked. You notice I'm wearing my Chinese shirt and I got that dirt right here. This is from my dog. I took him for a walk before our session here, and to thank me, he decided to put his paws up. He's a big dog, and he put his paws up here and said, "Thanks for taking me for a walk." I said,
That's so cute.
yeah.
All right.
Take
So,
care. It's been a
talk
pleasure.
later. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a pleasure. Goodbye.
Bye bye.